Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. My name is Tony, and thank you for joining us live. If you haven't already seen it, there is a poll in the chat for you to let me know if you prefer the live or the replay, or maybe you partake in both. That's up to you. But if you're joining us live, thank you very much for your time. And if you're catching us on the replay, thanks for taking the time to check out what we do here at Star Trek New Worlds, which is to play a turn-based strategy game using the rule set of Federation and Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, displaying it for you using the magic of Vassal. And of course, sharing with you the adventures, the exciting, the role-playing, the story, the narrative, the evolving friction that exists within this war game as we play it online with you online, or with you on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. If you're looking at the screen right now and you're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? That little QR code is if you take your phone and you go whoop, you can make a donation to keep us caffeinated here on the channel. And of course, if the link is more your style, then you can see that just down there in yellow. But if Patreon's more your style, you can see that in the description below. I want to thank you very much for all of our subscribers as we are working towards our journey of 500. We're just shy of our halfway mark. And once we get to 500, we can unlock the community tab, which is just a feature in YouTube that allows us to be able to post things like polls or pictures or other kinds of commentary that isn't just videos and live streams. So Ricardo Perny, thank you very much for joining our subscriber community. And for any and all of you who are watching now and not already a subscriber, please consider joining our community and helping us get towards that 500 number. Of course, if you like to tickle the algorithm YouTube-wise in just the right way, then feel free to hit that thumbs up button, and that's the rest of the promo, or all the promo that I'll be doing for the rest of today. But what are we talking about today? What exciting things do we have on the go? Well, as you might have seen, we have Galaxy Today, as written up by our wonderful GM, Daniel. Let's dive right into it. Gently used planet for sale. The planet of Armageddon is living up to its name. Hydran forces surged forward and captured the planet, only to be dislodged by another push from the Riemann Navy. There is no clear winner as of yet over this beleaguered planet, but surely the local population are the true losers. Poking holes, ISC forces made a surprise foray across the galaxy and invaded Tholian space. Their fleet charged through a wormhole in Sector Sierra 25, destroying the base under construction and chasing off the construction fleet. Then, as quickly as they arrived, they returned to their own space, leaving wreckage in their wake. Have they accomplished a quick strike and fade, or have they pulled yet another empire into their growing war? Hydran harassment. Hydran forces have surged back to stem the oncoming tide of ISC Juggernauts. But boom, ladies and gentlemen, the Juggernauts themselves have decided to donate to our caffeination today. Let me interrupt the highlights for a quick libation of the caffeine variety. Back to the headlines. Let me start again. Hydran forces have surged back to stem the oncoming tide of the ISC Juggernaut, not to be confused with the Juggernauts. Several key sectors were recaptured, and a few lone ISC patrol ships destroyed in the fracas. Will the misanthropic masters of methane match the military might of their malefactors? Maybe. Only time will tell. Klingon comeback. After rampaging unchecked through Klingon space, the Juggernaut Raider fleet was finally drawn into a battle over base station Juliet 48. Sources say the mechanical fiends were decoyed into a pre-designated kill zone and cut to pieces by the Klingon Navy, and that the flagship was forced to flee before utter destruction. What will be the response from the Juggernaut High Command? Will this put them in their place, or result in more escalation from this mysterious force? Stay tuned. Borders of madness. Something strange is happening in the space north of the Gorn-Romulan border. A massive free travel zone has been established for reasons unknown. Only these two great empires know the truth. Is this a sign of improving relations after the disastrous Westwood affair, or is something more sinister afoot? Shedding sheep's clothing, the Federation, a nation renowned for its pacifist relations with every minor power within its borders, has gone to war. A massive fleet attacked Gayton, and after a fierce battle in orbit, bombarded the planet into submission. At the same moment, the primitive world of Kobol was cowed by a brief but violent display of force from the USS Hosgawa. As the Federation Starfleet has the Federation and Starfleet taking over the government of this previously peaceful empire, all eyes turn to the world of Prowl, last remaining independent planet within the Federation, and wonder if it too soon shall share the same fate. Oh, that is the headlines today here at Galaxy Today. What do you think of that Shatnerian delivery? I don't know. Is it too much, too little? You tell me. Who knows? But let's, before I sort of get into the map, let's go into the chat and say hi to everyone. Eugene, ladies and gentlemen, Eugene, the public affairs officer for this channel. Eugene, the 2 weeks wait is almost over. Boarding parties ready, popcorn to share, extra butter. Juggy problems, question mark. Did the legendary E1 captain take care of or just consult on the bigger problems? Will someone investigate the stable work signature, or are we afraid to know the answer? You cannot unknow some things. And what's this about feds getting rowdy and someone waking the Tholians? Well, as we talked about in the headlines today, we're going to get into that. Bill is in the house. Gorns are shields up and plasma hot. Big, slow target. Guessing the poll is going to have a real big early bias towards live. Fair. Jim, Hydrogen Fusion Beans warmed up and hot. Paul is in the house. Hi, hi. Daniel, pew pew. Dargan, Noctim, Voidstar. Whoa, hello. First time catching live. Dargan, thank you very much for joining us here on the live show. Let me know in the chat if you like our colorful delivery or you just about the numbers when we get to the map. You let me know. And then, of course, Bill is conveying our warm welcome to Dragon, Jim as well. Everyone, say hi to Dargan, our brand new live viewer. Okay, so let's get excited as we jump into where should we start? There are so many interesting things to begin with. Why don't we start with the what the heck is going on the border between Gorn and Romulan space? Let's slide into the map and discuss. Ladies and gentlemen, what is this business right here? So for those of you who are just joining us for the very first time, let me zoom out real quick and give you a bird's eye view of the galaxy as it stands right now. I will slide this over ever so slightly. So as you can see, we are a hexagonal map, and you have the factions all around the edges. At the very top, you've got what was previously referred to as Big Red, the Remans. The yellow on the right are the ISC. The greens coupled together are the Hydrons and the Carnivon, Carnivon being the yellow and green combo. The Klingons in black and white in the bottom right corner, followed by the Romulans to their left, the Gorn in white and red, the new Big Red, the Tholians, on the western side of the map, Federation in blue, and of course the Lyrans in yellow and green. So we will put that map back in place and zoom in to be able to get our latest and greatest. Ooh, a little bit too much maybe? Oh, no, that's good. To what is going on here with the Gorn. So, as we saw the big donut of a map, we are zoomed in here on the Gorn and Romulan border. Qu'est-ce qui arrive? What is going on? Well, we can see we have in yellow these neutral zone borders between the Big Red Tholians and the Gorn down below. The Romulans and the Gorn have their own border up here, as you can see. And then we have this dotted or dashed yellow area, which is our free trade or free transit zone. Now, what's going on between these two factions? What have they done? Well, obviously, somehow, some way, they've come to an agreement whereby they are both able and willing to be able to transit this zone freely and functionally. I'll be curious to know from those factions what is going on when it comes to base building and your rights and privileges to be able to build out a logistical framework in that area. After all, when we look at the way this is shaped, it's kind of closing off the Romulans to be able to go further north. And as we zoom out a little bit, we can see that the Romulans are kind of running out of their quote-unquote backyard being the space sort of away from the center toward the edges of the map, where it is very unlikely you're going to face any threat. Although, to be fair, they do have quite a few wormholes in that area, the Romulans, that is. So, yeah, so what's going on there? I don't know. I have no inside intel. Only the Gorn and the Romulan player can truly let us know what is going on in that regard. If you want to dive in to find out more about the narrative, the story, the behind-the-scenes tomfoolery that is going on into creating such dynamic map features as that, then please feel free to check out the Discord option in our Coffee and or Patreon. If you subscribe at that level or support us at that level, then you too can have access to the Discord where we share the narrative story about what is going on in the back end and the role-playing exchanges as to how things like this will occur. Well, let's zoom in, and before I go any further on the map, I do apologize. I keep getting distracted. We'll do the quick EP and fleet cap count so that we can figure out what is going on this map and who's who in the zoo. All right, I'm just trying to open this up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's start from the top, work our way down. The Carnivon are making a total of 43 EP a turn. That is down from 44, I do believe. So what is going on that they are losing their money. I don't know. We'll have to take a look at the Carnivon map in a second to see where that lost EPK or where it went. What is going on? The Federation have leapfrogged ahead with their conquering of Geton and are now at 43.5, surpassing the Carnivon for the first time in the game. The Gorn are at a sweet 44, which, again, I keep staring at the Gorn in awe in their ability to be able to steadily, the tortoise and the hare, the tortoise in this case, being able to steadily creep and succeed forward despite everybody else's difference in play. So very interesting. The Hydrons have been reduced to 14, even though they are, as we saw in the headlines, coming back. The ISC, surging to 48.5. Now, granted, I do believe they were at 50. Not just, it's been 2 weeks. I do apologize. It's not quite as fresh. But if you want to check in our last live stream now 2 weeks ago, you'll see, I believe that they were at 50. So they've taken a step back when it comes to their EP, but I think that's just because, of course, the Hydrons are resurgent, so to speak. The Klingons are at 49, even Steven. The Lyrans at 40.5, the Remans at 45.5 as they continue to walk their way south on the map. The Romulans at 41, just peeking over that 40 number, and the Tholians at 48.5. Very interesting. There is a certain level of pride, so to speak, that the Klingons have once again claimed the top spot when it comes to econ. But let's look at this. 49 with the Klingons, 48.5 for the Tholians, 48.5 for the ISC. That is quite the strata. Then you go to 45.5 for the Remans, 43.5 for the Feds, 44 for the Gorn, 43.5 for the Feds, 43 for the Carnivon, and then 40.5 for the Lyran. And of course, the Hydron are at 14. But it's quite the interesting stratification now, sort of within the 40s, whereas we saw that before in the sort of the high 30s and the low 40s. Very interesting. I wonder who's going to be the first to truly crack 50 and then stay there. That will be interesting to see. Let's go to fleet cap, the numbers of ships that people have. Well, the Carnivon are sitting at 87 ship equivalents with a 217 attack, 371 defense factor. The Federation are seemingly surging with 60 now ship equivalents. Excuse me, at 144 attack, 229 defense. The Gorn are at 44, matching their econ, with 93 attack, 185 defense. Interesting to note, they are slowly creeping towards cracking that 100 total attack factor, which is a key milestone in their military strength. The Hydrons are at 67 ship equivalents with 155, 264 attack and defense, respectively. The ISC, 96 ship equivalents with a 301 and 429 attack and defense. That's big stuff. The Klingons are at a total of 63 ship equivalents with 160, 249, cracking the 150 mark by a clear margin and working their way up. The Lyrans are at a 56 ship equivalent with 134, 263. Again, still staying below that 150 mark. Interesting to note. The Remans, oh my goodness, look at this. They are like head and shoulders above the 3-digit mark. They are 119 ship equivalents. And this is sick. 353. Whoa. 353 attack, 465 defense. Wow, that's a lot. Oh man. Okay. The Romulans are at 56 ship equivalents with 154, 247. That's a particularly interesting number because they've just cracked, or they're above the 150 mark for total attack factor. And if you look at just their neighbors, for example, you look at the Klingons on the right, so with 63 compared to 56. But 154 to 160 attack and defense attack factor. The Klingons with the 160, the Romulans with 154. Quite a delta in the ship count, but very close on the attack factor, so that's interesting to note. The Gorn, by comparison, on the other side, have 44 to the 56 and are well below the total attack factors. The Romulans being at 154, the Gorn being at 93. Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. But let's not forget Big Red and the Tholians with 56 ship equivalents and still under 100 with 81 total attack factors and 220 for defense. Now, some of those factions like the Gorn, the Tholians, for example, they just don't have strong attack factor ships at this stage of the game, at this level of technology. As we creep into or get to, at some point, the M era. As a recap, we have the W era, which is the stage of technology we all started at. The next milestone technology is Y. These are both earlier technologies, W, then Y. The Y era, and then we move into the early M era or middle era. And that's when we start seeing, as far as our timeline, our Strange New Worlds, our Captain Pike and the USS Enterprise, and things like that. And then we move into the GW, or the General War era, which is our last major milestone technology. And that's when we really start to see things like Kirk and the Enterprise and sort of get to the X ships, which are, depending on your interpretation, from my perspective, I see them as like the movie era of Star Trek 2 and 3 and that kind of era of technology with the introduction of the Excelsior and things like that. So that's sort of the spectrum of technology that we're dealing with. We are currently in the Y era. As far as I know, everyone's still in the Y era, but we know that M is coming, like based on the time in the game and the general sort of hintings that everyone's been giving in regards to how much money or resources they've been applying to research and technology on the tech tree. There should be somebody soon who's getting to M-Tech, and when and if that happens, it'll be interesting to see those kinds of ships appear on the board. So it'll be very interesting to see how that all works out. All right. Now, let me just take this moment, since we're hovering over the middle of the map, to acknowledge these two non-Fog of War hexes. What is going on there? Well, if you go back and check out our previous live streams, not only 2 weeks ago, but even before that, there was a Carnarvon destroyer slowly working its way towards the center of the map. And then, as I've been informed this morning when I looked at the map, that particular ship came across previously explored hexes. Now, let me give you a quick recap on how this works in this particular campaign and game. So, as you can see, we have hexes that are black and hexes that are gray. The gray hexes are the Fog of War hexes. Nobody's explored those hexes. Nobody knows anything about those hexes. They are unknown, untamed lands. The black hexes are hexes that have been explored. And functionally, from our perspective, what we are describing this as is that they have been surveyed by some ship or some faction, and they've left basically navigational buoys in space to be able to help identify and inform and for the purposes of safe navigation, let everybody, space travelers, know sort of the space and the charting in that area. So when another faction has explored a hex or an area of space, the new player sort of into that area of space, in this case the Carnarvon player entering into an area of space that has been previously explored, will come across those marker buoys, those navigational buoys, and will have a sense and understand, this area has been explored. And they will gather and receive that data from the navigational buoys and therefore open it up. So when the Carnarvon ship entered those hexes, it discovered that those hexes were explored. But you'll notice that the ship isn't there anymore. Somebody blew it up, or something happened to it, shall we say. The only player who really knows is the Carnarvon player, because it was his ship, so he'll know who it was who reached out and touched him in some way, shape, or form. Who knows? Was it a random event? Was there a warp core breach and did something blow up, or was there something more nefarious with regards to an encounter with a hostile faction? Who knows? one of the things that's interesting to note is in this game, once all the players make contact with each other, there is an exchange, or shall we say merchant traffic goes back and forth. And so all those merchants share intelligence, share navigational data, and share information about each other's space. So once all the factions are within supply contact of each other, then the map opens up. And that's what you see now with our donut map as I zoom out here in a moment. So when you look at our donut map, you see that everybody can see everybody else. And that's the sharing of navigational information. But there's obviously a faction in the middle of the map that has explored space but is not in contact or supply with other factions. So who could that be? At the very beginning of this campaign, there was a rumor of riches and, shall we say, opportunity that might be at the center of the galaxy. We, of course, up to this point have never encountered anything there because we're slowly making our way towards the center of the map. However, we have encountered a faction, the Juggernaut faction, that has been popping up on the map. We don't know where they're based. We theorize it's in the middle of the map, but we don't know because no one's encountered them yet. But when we look at the map right now, you can see two things that tell us about what's going on in the middle of the map. The first one, obviously, these two hexes I just talked about. DD, or Delta Delta 30, and EE, or Echo Echo 30. That's where that Carnivon ship popped in and then got blown up. We also see this white hex over here. And let me zoom in one more so you can see it maybe a little bit better. So this is an unknown sensor signal or sensor contact. What we know about it is that it is size class 3 and that it has stabilizers. So what that means is just that as opposed to it being a ship that is floating around in space, it has a static position and is using stabilizing thrusters of some kind to be able to maintain its position. That is a key indicator of a base. So we know that this is a relatively small base, i.e. it's not YDK or something bigger like a star base because that would be a bigger size. What it is size class 3. So it looks like it's a smaller type of base station. What kind of base station would that be? I don't know. We'll have to see. But the Orions, it looks like, or somebody over in this neck of the woods, initially detected it, but nobody has of yet actually gone to see what it is. Now, as you can see here on the map, and we'll talk about the Remans and the Hydrons shortly, but the Remans with this KE2 and the Xenon fleet are the only two factions that could potentially send anything to that contact and figure out what it is. Once they sort of land on top of it, they'll encounter it, and then we'll be able to see what it is. But we don't know yet because no one's actually entered that hex as of yet. So, exciting and interesting to see what's going on with this mystery faction, potentially, in the middle of the map. What we do know is that somebody's explored space, i.e. those two hexes that have been discovered, and that there is at least one base station near the middle of the map. What does that look like in the grand picture? Who is there and what are they doing? Is it the Juggernauts? Is it somebody else? We'll have to see. And who's going to get there first to figure it out? Woo! I don't know. But with the Remans having 350 attack factors with their ships, and granted they're a little engaged at the moment with a little bit of a war, but they seem to be the most well-equipped, them in the ISC, to be able to check it out. But hey, far be it for me to take it away from the Tholians, the weakest faction on the game. I say that just from the perspective of their attack factors. Why don't you guys go check it out? Let's see what happens. Wow, right. So speaking of the Tholians, let's slide on over and check out the Tholian map. Let's do a quick once around the Gorn map and just see any big changes that are going on. So let's take away the ships real quick, and we can see that there is a base under construction here just below this Alpha Alpha wormhole, which I do believe is brand new. Please remind me if it's not. A brand new wormhole discovered over here, and of course we have a base station that is located here. So this is very interesting. If we count it out, we have 1, 2, 3 wormholes, full wormholes in Gorn space, and of course 2 of them have YDKs over top of them, which is great because it's basically a giant cork that prevents stuff from coming out the other side. So we got a base being built there. Bring back the ships, and we can see that we have a number. These second and third fleets, I believe, from our previous discussions, are basically exploration fleets, just like Vengeance fleet and a bunch of these up here with big ships with prime teams being able to explore space as they move up in this northeasterly direction. We've got mobile fleet, of course. We have interesting to note that we have a Tholian cruiser just kind of sitting in the neutral zone. How the Tholian and the Gorn player are choosing to interpret neutral zones. Very interesting. If you are a TOS or the original series fan, or even as recently as the season finale of Strange New Worlds, neutral zones come into play. And depending on your, or TNG for that matter, my observation and interpretation of neutral zones is that unless there's a specific agreement that you guys can like go travel in that area, neutral zones are like a no-go zone. Like, you don't go there. You don't go into the neutral zone because it telegraphs or indicates some kind of threat, or that you're looking as a faction looking to do something naughty in the neutral zone. You're crossing, you're entering a gray area where you potentially could cross a line. And so every time I've seen neutral zones being transited, for example, in TNG, you always see a Federation ship or another ship from that faction show up and say, hey, you're in the neutral zone. What's going on? We've seen that happen in the movies. We've seen that happen in most recently in the replaying of Balance of Terror in the Strange New Worlds season finale, and of course Balance of Terror in the original series. So very interesting to see how this is all kind of working out. How are the Gorn and the Tholians using their neutral zone? I don't know. Obviously, the Tholians are transiting it and doing what they want to do. We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. Also, before I leave the Gorn, I'm going to move my head to the other side real quickly and slide over to the other side of the map because... oh, you can't see it. Hold on. Let me just slide it over here. And now you can... oh, try that again. And now you can see it. There is this strike fleet right here. What's going on there? Strike fleet is a Gorn fleet that has popped through their wormhole that they share and is now in whoever owns this space now, whether it's Hydron or ISC, let's call it Hydron space for now. They've popped through into this space. Now, let's just bring that back. What is Gorn? That's Strike Fleet, named echelons. Let's bring this over here so we can see. Strike Fleet is 2 YCCs, a YCL, 3 YDDs, and a Prime Team. Okay. What we can also see as I slide this over is that... oh, I have to... there we go. What we can also see is that hex is not explored. So it's still a Fog of War hex. Why is that important? 2 things. One, you can't have supply go through an unexplored hex, but also, so the assuming that there's 2 things. One, Strike Fleet has gone through the wormhole and no ships are crippled. So that could be indicating that they've reached a point in their technology where 2 things. Slow units can travel, and of course they can travel their combat ships without being crippled. If they can put slow units through that space, then that will also mean that they can get supply. So they need to explore that hex in order for them to get supply through that and move into Hydron space. They need to be able to explore that hex to be able to have supply through the wormhole. And if we, if we look at the 2 wormholes we were talking about, in Gorn space, they both have YDKs over them. So assuming a 3 supply, they can at least go 2 hexes out from that wormhole. And let me slide over there one more time. And what's that right above it? That's a resource. So they could snag that resource if they wanted to, assuming they explore that hex. And then they could build a base on that wormhole in the hydrogen sector, and then, ooh, what's that going to do? So all sorts of exciting things are happening now that the Gorn are sticking their toe in that water and stirring that pot because, woo, yeah, exciting stuff. Okay, so the Gorn have now entered the theater of war, so to speak, although whether they're actually attacking anybody, we'll have to wait and see. But the Gorn are now in that neighborhood, and we'll get to that neighborhood in a bit. Other than that, of course, they've got their diplomacy team here on this planet, improving the attitude of the planet. Once they get to Happy Plus or H Plus, you get a 0.5. Oh no, it's a developing planet. But if it were to grow to the next level of planet, colony being level 1, developing planet, which is what this is, level 2, a minor planet, which is level 3. Once it gets to level 3 and you have a Happy or H Plus on it, it gets an extra 0.5 EP for income. So something to think about. All right, let's scroll up into Tholian space. All right, couple things. First of all, my big thing that oh, damn. Okay, so what am I looking at? I am looking right now at the Kzinti planet, which is a medium planet, which is a 4 EP income planet. And it is obviously in the south on the border with the Tholians. Now, the reason why I'm going, oh, damn, is because the Kzinti have quite a robust military here, at least this minor faction. They've got a total of 6 planetary ground bases and, what was the name? Home fleet. So the Kzinti home fleet is not nothing. It's a total of 6 frigates, 3 light cruisers, 3 strike cruisers, a command cruiser, and a DN. That is more than enough to hold off what the Tholians have as a military, because as we've talked about already, they don't have a very strong military presence, or at least when it comes to attack factor. So they're weak in this regard. So what have they been doing? They've been using diplomats to be able to, in a friendly way, bring over these minor factions, which is great for them and sucks for us as outside observers, because the Tholians are a big economic power in the game. Granted, the Klingons just overtook them by 0.5 on the EP ladder, but if they get this planet, which they could very well do next turn, with 4 EP added to their income, they will obviously surpass and be the top dog in econ for this game, which is, I don't want to say scary, but the thing about the Tholians is that once they get to MTech and then GW, they just get worse and worse and worse and more deadly as we go. Even now, in their current state, granted they don't have the sort of the ships to be able to enforce this, but once they are fully operational, if you want to use another sci-fi reference, once they are fully operational, they really make it difficult for you to get them off of a point that they've decided to fortify. They have a number of technologies and capabilities in combat that make them hard targets. They may not have the best offense, but they have incredible defense, and it's just a huge pain in the butt. So, anything we can do to slow them down. And of course, the player who is playing the Tholians is a very experienced player. He is a game master from previous campaigns, and he knows this stuff inside and out. So, and he has, I would argue, has he? I think he's won every single game that we've played. Now, granted, if you're the game master, there's a certain sort of perhaps bias there, but he's done a really good job of trying to remove any sort of like advantage that he would have in those games. But in this game, I'm very interested to see how this is going to go. Why? Well, as we scroll up, of course, what do we see? Well, we know that there, well, I guess I should show you this ever so briefly. You can see that there is this minor faction over here, Green Dragon. If you like Tropic Thunder, our Flaming Dragon reference. So Green Dragon, another medium planet, currently not very happy with the Tholians, but they have a reasonable military. Green Dragon for the Borak is, I mean, they got a lot of frigates, but their frigates are really weak. A couple destroyers, a CL, CA, and a DN. So nothing crazy, and I don't think that they could really hold back the Tholians if they wanted to go after them, but it's an option. What's important about this turn and this map is this wormhole right here. As we heard in the headlines, the Remans popped through this wormhole and blew up a base. There was a YBS in this hex, a YBS being the sort of the first stage base station that you build, and this 3YPC acts like a tug, and they were upgrading that YBS into a YDK. You can see here that these two C or Y CPCs are currently building YBSs along this border to be able to further expand and move towards the center. But the Remans popped through this wormhole, blew that up, and then, of course, went through the other side. So what are the Remans going to do? And we'll get to the Reman side of this wormhole in a moment, but what's going to happen here? I don't know. What we do know is that if the Tholians have supply 4, which I think is a reasonable assumption, then this exploration cruiser is at the edge of its supply and exploration. So it can explore these hexes, and then that's it. But they're going to have to finish up these base constructions and fortify those bases, because if the Remans want to, they can reach out and go through, pop these bases here, and then go back through the wormhole just like they did last turn. Why wouldn't they hold ground and sort of like create a beachhead in this whiskey spot? I don't know, to be fair, because Reman fleets are so much stronger than the Tholians. So I don't know why they would do that. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. What else can we see here? Of course, on the homeworld, we've got an R&D team continuing to do shared research with the feds, Y convoys, or commercial convoys rather, going back and forth between them. We've got home fleet here. Let's just take a quick look at the Tholian home fleet, because we know that they don't have the biggest of navies. Yeah, so a crippled YPC and 2 cruisers. And their cruisers are 3.6s, which aren't terrible, but they're not comparable necessarily to the 4.6 of the Remans. And of course, the Remans have many other ships as well, just numbers that can really overtake the Tholians. What else can we see if we take away the ships real quick? We've got those bases under construction on the border. Interesting to note that there's 2 bases under construction at a time, which is which speaks to the economic strength of the Tholians. It costs 10 EP to build that. That means they're blowing 20 EP to build out those bases. Interesting to note that they're spending so much in infrastructure like that versus building ships. Why? I have a feeling that once they get to MTech, which I'm sure is coming soon, you're going to see a shift in a more militant fashion, and we shall have to see how that goes. But other than that, the big takeaways are the whiskey wormhole that we just talked about, and the sort of the incursion of the Remans, and then of course this Kzinti thing going on the bottom here, which unfortunately I have a feeling they're going to swap and become part of the Tholian Empire in short order. But let's not forget the other side of the map, just over my head here now. So what happened here? Well, we have a bunch of Tholian ships on the other side of their... Let me just take away the ship so we can confirm the wormhole. The November wormhole. And for reference, that's this wormhole right here. So closer to their homeworld and sort of well insulated within their space. So this wormhole right here has some very weak ships defending it. And what do we have just above it? 2 large... Well, let's just confirm how large they are. We'll go into a more in-depth Reman turn here, but we got Columbia Fleet, which is... Oh, goodness. Okay, this is... Yeah. And was it Atlantis? Come on now. Work with me. Athena? Is that what? No, that can't be Athena. That's Atlantis, isn't it? Reman. Come on now. Atlantia. There we are. Okay, so we got these 2 fleets. Let's look at the Columbia Fleet, which is, for reference, they've conquered this planet, and the planet will provide supply, meaning that they can go and hit this target and potentially go through it if they need to. What do they got? They've got 6, 12, 14 F4s, 6, 8 E2s, which are their frigates. And they've also got 3 cruisers. Now, that's not the craziest fleet that we've ever seen, but it's more than enough to stomp the Tholians because, again, of their combat effectiveness. So, yeah. And then on top of that, we have this Atlantia fleet, which is a cruiser, 3 destroyers, and 2 frigates. More than enough to hold off probably what's in the vicinity here. So we'll have to see. But, yeah, I think the Tholians are going to struggle. And if the Remans can get a foothold on that particular wormhole, why is that such a big concern? Because if they can get through that wormhole and take the other side, it's within spitting distance of their homeworld. And just for S&Gs, this is what the homeworld looks like. Now, granted, their homeworld is pretty well defended here. There are 11? There are 11 planetary ground bases and a YDK on the homeworld, 4 planetary ground bases on their minor planet, and then nothing on the third. So not nothing in the sense of the homeworld is reasonably defended. But if they were to get through this wormhole, it's going to cause huge headaches for the Tholians. But let's not spend too much time on Big Red. Let's move up and talk about Baby Blue. So Baby Blue, what have you been up to? Well, we know that this planet right here, Gaton, this used to be a Kzinti planet. And that Kzinti planet was the one that got stomped. Now, I don't have the full battle details of that combat, but let me give you a couple of quick highlights. We know that there were 11 rounds of combat. That's a lot. So 11 rounds of combat. And out of those 11 rounds of combat, obviously all the Kzinti faction or Kzinti forces were destroyed. The Federation lost no ships. They crippled a whole bunch, but they didn't lose any ships. And they had apparently a lot of flak, or we use the term flak to describe smaller ships that can soak up damage, so frigates and destroyers and so on. So they had those, but they got to the point where they're starting to cripple their cruisers. And that's important because that shows how deep they had to go into their battle lines. But they didn't actually lose any ships. And that's important because, especially for cruisers, at this stage of the game, most factions probably only have, at maximum, 2 cruiser slipways, which theoretically means that you can only build 1 cruiser per season or per turn. You can overbuild, of course. This is a thing you can do in the rules, but it costs a lot to do that. And cruisers cost a lot anyway. So 1 cruiser per turn, and if you're not losing any cruisers, that's good because you just keep building up that amount of cruisers. And we've seen that with the Federation, particularly in that they've been doing that, building up their cruiser base. More recently, they've also been building their stockpile of frigates and destroyers, but in the initial point of this game, or the initial part of this game, they were really building out their cruisers. What else can we see? Okay, so we can see that they've got a couple cruisers and prime teams based at this YBS very, very nearby. Excuse me. We can see this stack. So I see 2 YCAs, 3 YCAs, excuse me, a DD and an FF that are crippled, and then there's Home and 8th Fleet. Well, let's look at Home and 8th Fleet real quick. Excuse me, I'm hiccuping. Okay, so 8th Fleet, nothing too exciting to talk about. We've got a crippled frigate. And then it was Home Fleet, right? Yeah, Home Fleet. Fed home. Boom. All right, well, there's the crippled ships we were talking about. We have a total of 6 crippled frigates. And come on now, 4 crippled destroyers and a commando cruiser that was crippled. So you can see here there was actually quite a few more cruisers and command cruisers that they had available to them to be able to include in the combat. I mean, they had at least 4, and then 5, 6, 2 command cruisers. So they had lots of firepower still in reserve, but they crippled a bunch of ships. So it's interesting to note as we just kind of look at it. Very interesting to note. What else we got? Well, we can see that this was the big question about what are they going to do with this other Kzinti faction. That's the faction over here. They've been trying to get these guys on board with the diplomacy for a long time and to no avail. Although they did finally get the colony to come on side, which is great. Other than that, we've got 7th Fleet hitting over or sitting over this wormhole that leads into Klingon space, and then 2nd Fleet sitting over this one that goes into. Oh, I'm trying to remember. I want to say that goes into ISC space. That's right. All right, so let's just take a quick look at Fed 7th and 2nd, just to see what they're kind of putting in those areas. So pretty much the same. We've got 5 frigates, 3 cruisers, and for 7th Fleet, they've got 2 and 5, respectively. Is that 5 or 6? 5. So 5 frigates, and then 2 cruisers for 7th, 3 for 2nd. And for the longest time, 2nd Fleet wasn't, this was a fog of war hex. Now it's explored. So I expect that they will send a tug over there shortly to build a base, and then YDK to cork that wormhole and make sure nothing comes through it. So very interesting to see. Other than that, let's take away the ships real quick and see what else we got going. I expect they spent all their money and resources on building that fleet to go attack the Kzinti, and that's pretty much what we see. No other base construction going on. However, there is a little bit of exploration going on the the east, but everything else is really focused on getting that that planet on board. I'd have to check. I'd have to check our rules, our house rules, but I do believe in a medium planet, which is what Gaton is, when conquered the way it was conquered or devastated, it provides 1 EP, I believe. It might provide 2, but I think it provides 1 EP as opposed to the 4 that it can provide. So if it was diplomatically taken, it would be 4 EP. But if it's conquered the way it is, it'll be devastated like this for a number of turns until it comes back online fully and provides that full economic benefit. However, I mean, that's just money in the bank in the sense that they conquer these planets and eventually they'll come online and their economy will surge. So it'll be very interesting to see. All right, we'll do one more with the Lyrans, and then we're going to jump into the chat and just check out what everyone's saying. And of course, check into that poll that we started at the very beginning of the live stream. So let's take a look. Oh, if you haven't already voted on the poll, go feel free to check it out in the chat. That's my first time trying a poll in the chat, so very interested to see on how you like it. All right, let's take a look at the Lyrans. The Lyrans continuing their exploration and expansion to the south. Interesting to note, looks like 3 supply at this point. They're continuing to explore into the neutral zone between them and the Remans. Base construction. Yep, they're building a base right here in a very appropriate spot every 2 hexes, so that's good to see. And they will be moving further south, I'm assuming, as they work their way towards either the center of the map and or the Hydran Empire. They had a little bit of a something on for the Hydrans and the Carnivon as well. What else do we have going on here? We have Far Stars, so let's take a look at the Lyran Far Stars fleet. They continue to have a pair of DDs and FFs, W-era FFs and Y-era DDs sitting over that YDK. That wormhole, by the way, the Kilo wormhole goes into Carnivon space, which is there we are, right there where Den Fleet is. So we'll talk about that when we get into the Carnivon, but that's where that wormhole ends up. All right, what else we got? We got Bloodstar. So Bloodstar, let's see, Bloodstar. Oh my goodness, finding some of these fleets there it is. Bloodstar is sometimes a little bit of an exercise. 3 DDs with a CA just sitting on that base. Looks like that's sort of like backup in case something comes through that wormhole, which is good. We can see that they've completely finished exploring the back end. Previously, they had a couple Fog of War hexes there. Those are done. I expect that YSR and everything else is going to move towards the center to really explore and expand, take advantage of those Fog of War hexes. What else we have? Hidden Dagger and Home Fleet. I'm curious. The reason why I'm looking at a lot of these fleets is to see if anyone starts building M ships. Because what will end up happening is you'll get the M tech, and either just before or just after, you will spend money to upgrade your slipways. And then once you've upgraded your slipways, slipways being where you build your ships, and those are usually only at those are only at this point at the homeworld. And then once you've upgraded those ships, then you'll start building them. And we'll see M ships start to appear on the map. And so I'm checking it out because we're in that time zone, I keep saying, where I think MTech is on the verge. And so the question is, who builds MTech ships first? We'll see. But what we can see here in Home Fleet anyway is that the Lyrans are building a fleet. We've got 6 of these DDs, 2 FFs, a couple of YCLs, 3 of them, old school WRS CAs, and 3 CCs. So I don't know if they're building a fleet or if this is just a amalgamation of a bunch of other fleets, but nonetheless, Home Fleet does have a little something there. Let's look at Hidden Dagger. Oh my goodness. Hidden Dagger fleet. Oh, this is also not a small fleet. Dreadnought, very good to see. CC, CA, CL, 4 DDs and 3 FFs just sitting there. So you've got quite a collection of ships at the homeworld, and of particular note because there is this Alpha gravity well that is right next to their homeworld. I can't remember where the Alpha gravity well starts. We'll have to go find it and figure out where that comes from. Other than that, like I say, their White Stripes fleet, we've looked at these before. They're basically sort of static fleets that just sort of balance out or do their best to balance out the ships on the Riemann side that are on the other side of their neutral zone. And of course, provide them an initial response should bad things happen in that way. All right, let's take a moment and slide into the chat. Let me take a quick sip of water. Oh my goodness, we have a new subscriber. Ladies and gentlemen, Blair has just subscribed to the channel. Thank you very much. I believe that is the first time we've seen anybody subscribe to the channel live. And as you saw, there is the bosun call, the whistle that you heard, and then Klingon ship drops down, gives us that little update, and away we go. So thank you very much, Blair, for subscribing. You are now, Blair, the most recent, latest subscriber to the channel. Thank you so much, and thank you for helping us get to that much closer to our 500 goal and unlocking the community tab here on YouTube. So thank you so much for that. All right, let's get into the chat and talk to, oh my goodness, all of you. All right, we're going to start off with the poll. So the poll is, do you like watching live or do you prefer the replay? Well, of course, there is 38% of you that say I like live, but over or close to 2/3 of you like both, which is great. I'll be curious to know in the chat as we kind of work our way through the chat. I'll end the poll now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave the poll up and until the end of the live stream. We'll see how that goes. How do I close that? There we go. Yeah, very interesting to see. And I'll be curious to know how many of you, or what it is about the replays that you like. Do you like going over the map, like pausing the video and looking at the map and things like that? Because if that's the case, you just have to join our, well, I suppose we don't have it on the Discord, but we could do something like that if we wanted to, I guess. Either way, fun and exciting stuff when it comes to the map. If you want to see or have a copy of the map, you let us know, and then maybe we can find a way to be able to provide that to you. You let us know. All right, so let's dive in here. We've got Eugene. I'm going to pick this up here, Eugene. What is in DD30 and Echo 30? Well, we talked about the unexplored, or rather the explored hexes and what happened there. Let's see here. Bill, we can build bases to support center exploration. Find it. Use it. Yes, we can. And you'll see that. You've seen that on the map. There's a lot of factions that are moving towards the center for that very reason. Ray Dawson. Hi, Ray. Welcome. Hi, all. Holding an open house today. Glad I can watch this instead of dying of boredom. Well, Ray, I'm sorry that your open house isn't so busy that it's keeping you on your toes, but I'm glad that you are able to join us and at least catch us live here. So thank you, Ray, for joining us live. Daniel, haha, at Ray. Lord Lawless, welcome, Lord Lawless. Hey, gang. George Duffy's in the house. Hey, sorry I'm late. No big deal. Don't worry about it, George. Just glad that you're here. Missed the beginning. What year turn is New Worlds in now? We are in turn 68. One away from that magic number that I know you all are going to make fun of next week. But yes, we're getting close to turn 70 and the milestones that come with that. Big Slow Target says, the stabilized structure is almost certainly a stabilized warp gate. Ooh, connecting to the other campaign. It's obvious. Wouldn't that be interesting, eh? If we had one campaign connected to another. We've never had concurrent campaigns to have that even as an option. I never even thought of that. That's an interesting idea. And then what would happen if you were in one side, if you were on one side of the wormhole, you would be governed by one DM or one GM. And if you were on the other, you'd be governed by the other because we have different GMs for each campaign. I wonder. Wouldn't that be interesting? That's cool. That's a cool idea. We'll have to discuss. Incidentally, after this live stream is over and you like to chitter chatter and have more of this stuff in real time on voice, well, you can join us on their Discord channel. Our Discord channel has not only stories and narratives and role-playing aspects that you can read and sort of track and follow along with the various campaigns. Into the Void, which is our new campaign just getting started, and of course this, New Worlds. So if you want to do that, but also join us after the live stream and engage in chitter chatter, a little banter, and the talk that goes on afterwards, then you can go and check out our coffee link down there. Hit the QR code if that's easier, or visit Patreon, and you can join us on the Discord tier, and then you can join us on the Discord channel. After this live stream today, we're going to be talking about a specific rule about conducting directed damage on bases. It would seem as though we may have been doing it wrong all along, but we're going to be able to explore that rule as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, and check that out and see how we're going to apply it into our campaign. Want to join us? Check out that link and or the QR code and or Patreon, and join us in join us in Discord, and let us know. All right, let's go back. Bill Smith, second and third are exploration. Fourth is a warfleet. Ooh, war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Well, this is a war game, so obviously it's useful for something. Big Slow Target. Lord Lawless, they're in 68, I believe. ISC did it. Did they do it again? I'm dating myself. Eugene, uniform wormhole is now explored. Hadn't been before, if I recall. I do believe. Wayne Dan, map, LOL. Well, Wayne Dan, welcome to the show. Map? I don't know what you're referring to, other than it's the map, or do you prefer chart? As a man with a nautical background, I do tend to refer to it as chart. Curious what that's all about. Lord Lawless, lots of things happening on Saturdays. Can't always make it. So glad can catch the replay. Absolutely. Replays are great for that. Logan saying, sorry I'm late as well. Just woke up. Well, depending on your time zone, what were you doing last night? Lord Lawless, winner of one campaign becomes the Juggernauts of another. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. Interesting, eh? Bill Smith, 3D chess universes. Ooh, yeah, I like all these options. These are great ideas, guys. Ooh. Okay, very excited. I'm going to take one more sip of the aqua. While I'm doing that, I'm going to also take another sip of my casual coffee here. If you haven't already, hit the thumbs up button. We want to tickle YouTube in the right way so that more people who like Star Trek and all things turn-based strategy can see videos like this. But in a second, we'll get back to the map, or the chart, shall we say? All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's switch my head to the other side, and we'll talk about the dirty, the dozen, the Riemann. Hello, Riemann. How are you? Welcome. Boom, boom, ladies and gentlemen. Lord Lawless, new donation. Thank you very much, Lord Lawless. Woo, woo, woo. I will take a sip of my caffeination perfection to celebrate that coffee. Thank you very much. Incidentally, if you're ever wondering what, if you send us money and things like that, what is it going towards? Well, we use, obviously, computers and various other things to be able to live stream this to you. But that stuff costs cash in the sense of I use a platform called vMix to be able to do this live streaming for you. I have, when it comes to creating thumbnails and all the kind of visual stuff, then, there's Adobe, the creative suite, as it's called, to be able to create videos and do all that stuff and create thumbnails and all that business. And also, we're sort of creating we'll call it a financial base, trying to create resources to be able to make improvements to, for example, our vassal module and things like that. By example, we have some wonderful members of our community. I would like to highlight Paul, who is our local CGI artist, the ISC player. He, when you watch the intro to this live stream, the videos that you've seen and all the CGI modeling that goes on, he does that stuff. And I think it's only fair that we send him some kind of financial so-and-so to say thank you for doing that. We're not in that position as of yet, but it would be great if we could make it worth his while and worth his time to be able to create more exciting stuff for the channel, because he's very talented, and we can provide him the funds to be able to buy some more advanced software, perhaps, to be able to get more bells and whistles and make it look fancier. And then, of course, we have Kevin, who is currently, our vassal. We'll call him our, let me go back. It's a little easier to see me here. Our vassal engineer. He is amazing in the stuff that he knows and can work with vassal. I find vassal a little opaque and a little clunky to deal with. Kevin is the vassal whisperer. He's able to, he is the one responsible for the technical improvements and application of the vassal module we're using for Into the Void, and the progress that we're making towards improving that module, or that vassal module, so that we can have greater features and make it more graphically interesting and have it more fun for you when we get to the point where we can start sharing Into the Void stuff on a live stream. So you'll get to see that shortly if you're not already part of the campaign. But yes, Kevin, Paul, and other members of our community are donating their time and energy to be able to create the content that you see and participate in if you're a player, and to contribute to the fun that we have. And so all that to say, thank you very much for your donations. Thank you very much for your support. It all goes towards making this a better playing experience for all of us, and having a better time doing it. And of course, we just want to grow the community because it's all about having a place where we can all come together, have fun, and enjoy this kind of gameplay and all things Trek. So with that said, let's get back to the Remans, and away we go. All right, Remans. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what do we got? Well, let's do the back end, or their backyard, and then we'll work towards the front where the real fun stuff is happening. Okay, so as we can see, they are continuing to explore, well, what we'll call their backyard. So finishing off and polishing off these unexplored hexes in the top of their territory. They are not ignoring the fact that they are eventually pushing towards the center, because I imagine that the Lyrans are going to potentially close them off, at least right here. However, the Remans are, as we've mentioned, pushing towards the center. But before I get to the center, last little check-in here, we can see that this colony right here, it has a diplomat. They are working to improve the attitude there, just so that they don't revolt or do something crazy. And that's pretty much it. We've got the KT-4. So whenever you see these KT-4s, they have a slightly different shape than some of the other ships. They are tugs, and they are, like the T-4s for the Klingons, able to be able to build bases and provide extended supply. You can see that this one here has finished building a YBS, and I imagine, being that T-4s are a cruiser hull, he might try and use it to explore other hexes, and or just move it to a place where he can build other bases. Like, for example, in Foxtrot 10, if that's a place he wants to build a base, or maybe down towards the border. But as we move into the, shall we say, the disputed zone, we've got Pacific, Solar. Well, let's talk about Pacific and Solar Fleet. They look like they're on their way to participate, shall we say, in the tomfoolery that is about to occur. Pacific and Solar, let's just take a quick look to see what's in those crazy fleets. Anytime you're ready, brain, just kick in there. I'm staring at it, but I can't see Pacific Fleet. There There it is. Pacifica Fleet. Thank you. So we got, obviously I need more coffee. We've got 3 destroyers and 3 frigates in Pacific Fleet. So nothing too crazy. Let's take a look at Solaria. There we are. So Solaria, let's put it down here. By contrast, has a cruiser, 3 destroyers, and 3 frigates. So a couple things. One, this might suggest, if these are builds, fleets of builds that were built and then sending forward, what this may suggest is the current sort of stack of slipways that the Remans might have. By example, you can have a maximum of 3 destroyers and 3 frigate slipways. So is he building 3 frigates and 3 destroyers every turn? That's possible. Maybe he's only got 1 cruiser slipway. I think that's unlikely, but it's possible, 1 cruiser slipway, to build a cruiser and then send that forward. Maybe he built a tug in one of those turns because the tug, again, is a cruiser hull. So when you build a tug, it'll take up your cruiser slot. So that's possible. So I think these are new builds that are making their way to the front. And where is the front? Well, as we cycle down here, we can see that we've got a developing planet that has been conquered or taken. That's Squawk. I believe actually that was turned over to the Remans peacefully by the ISC to facilitate their participation in the conflict. And so we've got Pegasus fleet and Cerberus and a base. Okay, so let's look at Pegasus and Cerberus. Pegasus. Start us off again. So here we are. We've got 3 destroyers and 3 frigates. Like I say, that really shows me or indicates to me that's the build. Like these are builds that are being sent. So a couple things to think about for players who are building new ships. There are 2 movement phases. Technically there's more, but let's, for the purposes of what I'm discussing. Okay, we'll talk. There's 3 movement phases. The first is operational movement. Let's bring it in to be able to talk about this. There's operational movement. Operational movement is the earliest part of this phase, and this is when you move ships to wherever you want to move them. They move within their operational movement limit, which in the Y era for most of these ships is 4. So Y era technology, full speed ships, can move a total of 4. So they can move 4 hexes, and as a result, they move those 4 hexes, and they get to wherever they're going to go. The second phase is once you've resolved combat, you have what's called retrograde movement. Now, retrograde movement is interesting because you can sort of game the system a bit here. You can move 4 hexes and engage a target in combat. And whether you win that combat or you retreat, whatever the case is, you can then retrograde, assuming you're in supply. Retrograde movement has the same range as operational movement, i.e. 4 hexes, so you could theoretically hopscotch your way down the map. So you could engage a target and then retrograde to another supply point, and this is the key. Retrograde movement moves you back to another supply node. That is a base or a planet or a tug, I believe. I have to check that last one. But you can retrograde movement to supply nodes. And so I believe a tug operating as a supply point can be a retrograde point, but a convoy cannot. I'd have to double check that rule. Don't quote me on it, but I believe that's the case. So supply nodes, base, planet, for example, you can retrograde to those points. So that's a way you can sort of game it to be able to move ships forward. The last way is strategic movement. Now, strategic movement is, in this game, we have different levels of technology that enable you to move different distances for strategic movement. At this stage, I believe, and this may be different, but I believe most folks have 1.5, meaning that at the very end of your turn, combat's been resolved, you can strat move or strategically move units. These movements can move 1.5 times your operational movement. So for something that would move 4 hexes, it can move 6, by example. But they move at the very end of your turn, and they can't participate in combat at that point. The technology for this will increase, and eventually it goes, I think, at 1.5, and then it goes 2 and times 2, and then it goes times 3 at some point. So theoretically, and then I think at some point we get to unlimited. So at some point, if you spend and invest in the technology, you get to a point where you can strategically move your stuff across the map, and or, for example, in the case of these Y-era ships, if you were at the 2X, if you'd invested in that, which I believe is in the logistics technology or logistics family of tech, then you could move 8 hexes, by example. So very similar to the sort of the operational movement with retrograde if you had a combat or something along those lines. So these are ways that you can move in case any of the players hadn't been using this. So long story short, let's get back to the map. So we had Pegasus. Let's go back to Cerberus fleet, which was, oh, Cerberus is over there. My mistake. So Pegasus fleet is making its way south. We've got 2 tugs sitting over top this base and 2 what look like escort frigates in the area of operations. So there's 2. There's Cerberus, and then there's Columbia and Atlantis. So let's look at Cerberus first, because that is the fleet that's in the area that went through this wormhole. So we see we have a base here. And there were ships that went through this wormhole, popped Tholian stuff on the other side, and then came back. So let's look at Cerberus, because where's Riemann? There we are. Cerberus fleet. Ooh, Nelly. If I'm the Tholians, I'm going to be concerned about the size of this fleet. 2 things. 1, it has the KC-4, which is a dreadnought, meaning it can command 10 ships. Above and beyond itself. So a total of 11 ships in combat. That's not good for the Tholians. We've got a command cruiser, KD-4C. We have 4 cruisers, and then 6, 8 destroyers with a crippled K4 plus, and then 6 frigates. So this isn't crazy. The size of that fleet isn't crazy, but because it is significantly larger than anything the Tholians have in the same area, if I am the Tholians, I'm worried about it. Especially with the fact that there's 2 frigates or 2 tugs in this area, they can go build on this. If I'm the Riemanns, depending on what I have as far as technology on wormholes, I'm either building a base on this wormhole or I'm going through the wormhole and building a base on the other side. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's up to you. But either way, being able to do that is going to be valuable. Let's look at Atlantis and Columbia. I think we looked at these already, but Columbia, oh good God, and Atlantis. Atlantis. Is it Atlantis? Yeah, it's Atlantis. Atlantia, my mistake. So this fleet is not nothing. And because of where it's located, again, they can really pop through the wormhole, the November wormhole, and do damage on the other side. So what does that mean? Let's do a quick stroll back to Tholian space and fully understand what's going on. So you can see this November wormhole right beside my head is the one that the big fleet we were just looking at could go through. So that's the November wormhole. On the other side, they've got a YDK 3rd fleet. Let's take a look at Tholian 3rd fleet. I have a feeling it's not as big as... Well, it's not nothing. So we've got 4 cruisers, 3 destroyers, and then 6 of these YPCs. Now, the YPCs are interesting because they can do what's called a pinwheel. I wonder, I don't know, because I haven't played the Tholians, I don't know if the cruisers and the destroyers can also do a pinwheel. It'd be interesting to find that out. Question for the GM and or anybody who's there. It'd be interesting to find out if they can do the pinwheel as well, because the pinwheel basically adds like another ship of defense factors, and the ships that are pinwheeled operate like bases in the sense that you have to do an approach battle and various other things. It increases their defense factor and makes them really just harder targets to take out. But because the Tholians lack offensive firepower, is it really going to make a difference? It just draws out the fight and allows their lower combat compot, allows them to cause more damage. But at the end of the day, is that really going to make a difference considering how much firepower the Riemanns can bring? If I'm the Riemanns and I can, not saying that they can in this turn, because you gotta measure your gains. A strategic goal of being able to pop that base and take that wormhole is going to be valuable. Now, whether they want to do the whiskey wormhole and then November, or November then whiskey, totally up to them. But Remember, the Whiskey wormhole, the one that's further away from their homeworld, is this one in the top corner. And this one, November, is the one that's closer to the Tholian homeworld. So a lot going on there. But of course, they're not doing it all alone. They've got the ISC. So let's talk about the ISC. What's going on with the ISC? We got a crippled frigate. What's going on here? Another crippled frigate, I imagine. Yeah, out of base. So these guys are probably going to get fixed. What else we got? We've got a YBS that has... Oh, these two YBSs have SIDS damage to them. That is unusual. I have a feeling that was probably a pirate attack funded by the Holy Hydrants. Interesting. Okay. So what else we got? We've got, remember that this uniform, you can just barely see it on the edge of the map. This is this wormhole that my cursor is hovering over here. That goes to Federation space. So... not that the feds are going to go through that anytime soon, but something to think about. Let's open up the named echelons because that's how the Tholian or the ISC are organizing their fleet. So we got Order Fleet, which is the one that's sort of sitting in the back here. It has a CA, a CL, and 5 DDs. So not nothing, but not something that's going to like drop the hammer, so to speak. We've got, over this YDK, we've got 2 crippled DDs, which obviously are getting repaired, 3 DDs and a CC, which is good. What else we got? We've got, we've got CL, YDD, behave. I hate it when Vassal does this. It's so annoying. Come on now. Behave. All right. So we got a YDK. That's critical because as the ISC move forward into this space, having the repair capacity to be able to sort of get their ships back online is really important. So they got a YDK, and they obviously a bunch of crippled ships that they're going to be repairing. We have Second Fleet, so that's not on our list of echelon things here. Let's pull up Second Fleet. Well, it looks like they're learning something from the Hydrants, putting 1 ship in a fleet box. Good times. Oh, pet peeves. So it looks like they've got a CL and 3 DDs in this hex here. We've got a YTG here. Interesting, right next to that Second Fleet. And then we've got on the Hydrant homeworld, we've got Tug, couple commando ships, Third Fleet. I know this can all get very confusing, and that if you can follow it, great, and if you can't, I'm sorry. There's just so much going on here. I'll encapsulate it here in a moment. YCL and 3 YDDs. Basically, there's a boatload of ships in this area. We've got Enforcement Fleet, which is that's the big one here. We've got a DN, CCCA, 7 CLs and a DD, and that's sitting here over this planet here. And then Truth Fleet, which is the other sort of big fleet, which has a DD, 2 CAs, and 9 CLs, 2 DDs, and 2 Marshal teams. And then we got a bunch of other stuff. So you may not be following all the fleets. Let's just take away the ships real quick and show you what's going on. So the hexes with the lines through them are disputed hexes. And basically this is a mechanism in the game. There is a rule for it. There's sort of 2 different rules for it in the base F&E rule set. But what we're doing here is it allows a player to be able to sort of lay claim to territory that they control without having an established negotiated deal between another faction. Because if you can't eliminate the faction completely, then how do you take territory without a deal or a peace treaty? So what they're doing here is they are exercising this disputed hex mechanic to be able to claim this space. All the hexes are the territory that they're taking, and once it's resolved, the neutral zone, the new neutral zone, will exist around the edge of the disputed hexes. So as you can see, it's quite a dirty mess here, but what's important is that with all the ships that are there, the ISC are exercising this disputed hex mechanic to functionally claim territory while they're at war. Now, it'll just make it easier for them also when they go to peace, if and when they go to peace. Now, the way you disrupt it is if you can, as the opposing or player that you're at war with, if you finish a turn in the hex or in a disputed hex, the disputed hex is removed and go forward. I think this is the second turn that the disputed hexes have been in existence, and you need to do it for 6 turns in order to lay claim to that territory. And of course, you have to be at war with a faction to be able to do it. So that's what's going on there, and that's why the ships might be sort of all over the place, is because they're trying to maintain the disputed hex mechanic. Ships can react into disputed hexes to be able to, for example, keep the opposing faction from disrupting your disputed hex claim, and that's what's sort of going on here. However, we've got the Hydrons in and around because they did a little bit of a fight back. So let's see what the Hydrons have in 5th Fleet. All right. Of course, the thing I love the most about the Hydrons is the fact that they just don't use fleet boxes for more than a couple ships. Good times. 2nd Fleet. Hydron 2nd Fleet. Okay. Interesting. So 2nd Fleet, what's interesting about, so as you can see, shall we say stirring the pot a little bit with the ISC and the Remans who have taken this resource. We have a YDN and a Vol. Not a crazy fleet or, massive military power here, but they are certainly trying to disrupt the claimed hexes that are being claimed by the ISC. Also, to be fair, this is a legitimate threat to the YTG if the YTG was expecting to be able to build something. So if knowing that the Hydrons have initiative over the ISC, meaning they move first, if they attack that YTG, there's a really good chance that YTG is going to get maybe not destroyed, but certainly crippled. Because there is nothing with a 2-hex reaction range within reaction distance of that 2nd Fleet. So we'll have to see how that goes. Also, if 2nd Fleet moves south, by example, the KE2 can't respond to help because it'll be opening the distance. If you need more information about reaction movement, go check that out on our playlist. You will find reaction movement, the reaction movement tutorial talking about how this all works. You'll recognize it because it's Kirk screaming in the thumbnail. So what else we got? We got 5th Fleet that we talked about. So that's basically 2 Vols, 1 crippled, 1 not. So it looks like they are sitting over top of a YBS here with a YDD from the Carnivons offering a little support. We've got the stack here. What's in the stack? So we got a YBS, or a Hydron YBS, with a CC, 2 CCs, 5 Vols, 2 crippled Vols, and then Fox Skulk 1. Now we'll get into the Carnivons in more depth here in a second, but let's just see what Fox, try that again. Fox Skulk 1 is not insignificant. It's a CC, 2 CAs, 3 bombardment cruisers, 2 bombardment destroyers, 3 frigates, and a crippled frigate. So not nothing, and certainly that fleet could present a threat to the Reman forces in the area if they were coordinating at all. We've also got Iron Fleet here, which is, it looks like they're stirring the pot a little bit. Let's look at Metal Fleets, maybe? There we go, Iron Fleet. Destroyer with a couple Vols, so nothing too crazy, but just enough to be able to sort of, like I say, disrupt disputed hex claims. What else? We've got a YCC and a crippled YCC over a Carnivon base, and the Carnivon base has a DN, drone bombardment cruiser, frigate, and a crippled ship there. And as we move down, we've still got the Hydrons exercising and conducting exploration, such as iridium, tungsten, cobalt, and argon. But they've got 1st Fleet here. Oh, so the YBS here is crippled. Interesting to note. They've got a tug and 1st Fleet. So Hydron 1st Fleet only has a DD. This base is very undefended, and if the Remans and or the ISC are using pirates to be able to conduct hit and run tactics on the base and sabotage it, that could be a big problem. What else we got here? We've got a Carnarvon base with 2 frigates, a destroyer and frigate, and a YCA, crippled. Interesting. And then a bunch, home fleet, Hydra and home fleet. What's in Hydra and home fleet? I imagine probably something. Woo! What do we got? We've got 7 YCCs, a DN, 3 Vols, 5 Vols total, and a crippled Vol. That is the bulk of the Hydra Navy at this point, sitting over top of this YBS, close to their newly established capital, which it looks like it's got a Carnarvon YDK, a Hydran YBS that's under construction, and the tug doing the build, and then 2 crippled Vols and a non-crippled Vol. So it looks like Hydrans are slowly coming back a little bit here, trying to make some progress. And then, of course, we're rolling into the Carnarvon. Let me take a quick sip of water and check out the chat while I'm doing that. All right. Let's see here. All right. Paul. Dell saying I attacked through wormhole. Wayne, I heard getting a map might be possible. Tick, tick, tick. Well, we'll have to discuss that. Paul. Attacked, yes. Big slow target, 206.21. End on a friendly allied retrograde point. Base planet, not a tug or convoy. Like I say, I think that a tug operating as a supply point counts as a retrograde point. But, like I say, I have to check it out. But if that's what the rule says, that's what the rule says, and that's what it is. Eugene, can you operationally move to a node? Yes. And then strat, no. So can you operationally move to a node and then strat move on the same turn? Though there is a limited number of ships that can strat move over the ones that get free strat moves. So strat moves will work for units and ships that have not already moved during their operational movement phase. ISCCCC did it, not the Remans. Oh, the popping of the base through the wormhole. It was the IC that did it. Right. Them naughty boys. Pinwheel. CWs, DDs, and PCs can do pinwheel. Interesting. Okay, that's exciting. All right, let's get into the Carnarvon and see what's going on here. So we already sort of talked about some of the Carnarvon ships that are operating sort of north of their established border, supporting their Hydran allies and so on and so forth. So that's what's going on up here. Let's talk about what's going on in the bulk of their territory. So let's just look at their capital. Previously they had like some significant fleets there. Nothing there right now because, of course, they're moving everything north. We talked about Den Fleet, I believe. Let's just do another quick look at Den Fleet. Whoops, wrong one. So Den Fleet is, again, not nothing. We've got a Dreadnought, a CC, a couple CAs, a drone bombardment, destroyer, a frigate, a CL, a couple of prime teams, and a couple of crippled frigates. So not nothing, and it's certainly enough to be able to stop any Lyran incursion should it come through. But like I say, not nothing. Here on this colony, we've got a couple FFs and a commercial convoy, which is interesting. Wonder where that commercial convoy may or may not be going. Maybe it's going to the Hydran homeworld, maybe. What else we got? We got the exploration kicking in, which is what's going on here. So we got First Reserve as an exploration fleet. We've got YFEL and a YSR. So these are exploration functions. So they're building a YBS. Let's see here. Yep. So they're building a YBS, and that'll be finished at the same time the Klingons are finished building their base over this planet here. Great Peak, I think it is. Great Peak. Oh, get away with the bases. Great Peak. Yeah. So exploration continuing in the northwestern corner for the map. As we look down here, we've got Coyote Band 1 and Wolfpack 1. Those are the fleets that have been there basically just kind of guarding the border because, I mean, why not? Oh, interesting. Huh. So there's 7 frigates there. That's more than they had last time. And a drone bombardment cruiser and 2 cruisers, a DN, a CL. Interesting. I wonder if they're rotating ships out, because that's more ships in Coyote Band 1 that were than was there previously. Interesting. And let's just look at Wolfpack 1. Cruiser and destroyer, both drone bombardment, and then 3 destroyers and 3 frigates. So what's interesting about that is, of course, if you've been following this campaign at all, you will know that the Carnarvon jumped the Klingon Empire way back when, although it's not that long ago. But we were in a war with the Romulans, and the Carnarvon basically backstabbed us and decided to attack us without cause, you will say, although they manufactured a cause, and then jumped across and took some territory. Now, interesting to note that in that exchange, they could have really pressed their advantage, possibly. But they took that planet that will go back to Echo, where Wolfpack 1 was. They took that planet and just the surrounding area, and then just kind of drew the new line, and that's it. So they had a very modest sort of territorial gain there. And at the time, that planet was still a minor faction, so it wasn't like I owned it or anything, or it wasn't EP for me. But they did sort of move the border a little bit and then go from there. So, but all that to say is that established this sort of trepidation, cautiousness, or suspiciousness when it came to Carnarvon's moving ships around the Klingon border, for me as the Klingon player. And so it's interesting to note that they're in the middle of a war with the Remans and the ISC, and it looks like, or it seems as though, the Coyote Band fleet is growing. And so this is like, if I were to look at Coyote Band and Wolfpack 1 and I combine those 2 fleets, that's more than I've got in the area, and I'll show you that in a minute. But it's interesting because when it comes to the Carnarvon and the Klingons, there's always a little bit of suspicion and a lack of trust with what the Carnarvon are doing because, well, they jumped us in the past. So, like I say, there's this suspicion there. And so it'll be interesting to see how this kind of evolves going forward. So, anywho, interesting. Right. Well, let's jump back into the map real quick, and we'll polish off the Klingons and then the Romulans, and then we'll be on our way. So, big things for the Klingons. We'll get to the Juggernaut battle in just a moment, but before we do, let's just go along the border here. So, big things along sort of the edge of space for the Klingons. You can see there's this collection of cruisers with prime teams, some with, some without, and they're basically just pushing the limits on exploration. So we've finished building a base here, the T4, and so that extends our reach to the north. Again, I have to build another base kind of up here to do the same thing along the border with the Carnarvon. Yeah, basically continuing this exploration to the north, generally northwest, north. And pushing towards the center. So that's what's going on there. Along the border with the Carnarvon, so the big thing here is in previous conversations with the Carnarvon, we established that, and in our treaty, we established that not only would Grey Peak specifically, because there was an exception carved out for this, not only would they have a base built there, but the intention is to build a YDK there because it's a planet and you want the best sort of like defense for the planet. That's why, by example, you'll see that there's a YPGB, Y-Era Planetary Ground Base, Y-Era Planetary Ground Base, thank you, that the tug, the T4, brought up there and has established there. So just trying to like prevent what happened with Echo, which is this planet here, from happening with Grey Peak, by example. So that's gonna build out there. And then the plan is, or the initial plan was, the T4 is going to build supply into the free transit zone to be able to get Klingon ships to get up to and in and around the operating area of the conflict. The initial intent or interest of the Klingons was to sort of get towards Armageddon, because Armageddon was originally a Klingon planet. Granted, minor faction, but a Klingon planet. So get into that area. And of course, in the initial trade with the, or initial agreement with the Hydrons, they had ceded us a bunch of territory up there with a resource. So the idea was to get up there and do stuff. But of course, it takes a while to do that. So the free transit zone was, the FTZ that you see there, was designed to be able to enable that. So that's still the plan, build bases and get up there. But like I say, it takes a while because it takes a while to build bases and so on. And of course, money, which of course no one has enough of in this game. So that's what's going on there. You can see that East Fleet over here is, that's a tug and a prime team. So tugs, for the T4 anyway, is a cruiser. So that basically has the same exploration chances as a small exploration freighter. And as you see, they were successful. So we'll build a YBS there in accordance with our treaty with the Carnivon, and allow us the supply to be able to continue exploring and kind of flush out this fog of war area along the side here. As you can see on the south, we've got a little exploration going on there. And then, of course, here's the big baddie. Okay, so what happened? The way that I wrote the orders was that I wanted to, because the way that the Juggernaut were positioned, where they were just sort of like outside the operational range. We talked about operational and strategic movement a moment ago. The Juggernauts were positioned, they were just outside the operational range of ships built at the homeworld, because that's where your ships are built. And so depending on where the Raider or the Juggernauts decided to move, I wouldn't be able to engage them with the new builds that I had built. So in order to, depending on where they were located, in order to stimulate reaction movement from them, I moved them first. And I moved them, as I wrote my orders, to move as close to or engage the Juggernauts. And as I believe I'd written it, I thought they could only get to, I think they might have only been able to get to like right next to the Carnivon. However, what ended up happening was in the movement that they took going towards the Carnivon, they, lucky me, went over the base in Juliet 48. That's this base right here. The Juggernaut fleet happened to be adjacent to it and reacted into that hex. And then everybody else, all my other ships, moved to that hex to engage the Juggernauts, because I had written my orders in a way to basically, the intent was engage the Juggernauts. So when the battle actually occurred, and I may have to go hunting here a little bit for the email. I think, yeah, I'm going to have to hunt a little bit here for 2 seconds to try and find the combat areas in Juliet 48. So the total number of ships that the Juggernauts had, as a reminder, was one cruiser, which is a 12-12 ship, and it's also a mauler, meaning it can pop basically any one of my ships in one shot. A CL, which is a straight 8 ship, 2 DDs, which are 6-6s, and 3 FFs, which are 5-5s. I had a YBS, 3 D4Cs, which are the command cruiser, and all that means is just that they're the same 4-6 attack and defense. They just have the ability to command up to 9 ships above and beyond that ship. So total of 10 ships in a battle line. 2 D4s, 1 tug, and this is a kicker. I'll get to him in a second. And because of the way everybody maneuvered, 19 F4s, and that was kicker, and then a dagger team. So here's how this went down. I wrote my orders to basically do 2 things. One was to first have an approach battle because it was happening at a base, and the intent of the approach battle was just to try and wear them down. But the way that if the Juggernauts win, then they can move closer and closer to the base. So I'll have to go over the approach battle rules with the GM just to make sure that I'm on the same page and we're all on the same page. But in the context of this battle, the Juggernauts won the first round by inflicting more damage to me than I inflicted on them, and then moved to the point where they got to the base. So basically, there was one battle, approach battle, and then they were at the base. And then we had the battle at the base. So the initial idea was to have a D4C as a command ship in formation bonus, because if you have a ship in formation bonus, it cannot be targeted by a mauler. And then I filled out the rest with F4s. And you can pop an F4 with directed damage, that's fine. But then the rest of the damage after the F4 is popped gets splashed out to everybody else. So it's just normal damage. So it was my way to be able to try and neutralize the effectiveness of the mauler, because the mauler was the real big heavy-hitting weapon in that example. So I started off with the command ship and then a whole bunch of D4s. But once the battle went to the base, it changed up. So still have a D4C as a command ship, and then the base operating or giving us the best EW that it can, gives me an EW advantage, and then basically best ships in the battle formation. Now, I kept my tug as a rescue tug. Now, we saw the Gorn do this once with one of their ships or one of their battles. I used the rescue tug to be able to save my D4C because obviously it was going to get destroyed, and then when it's destroyed, you can use a rescue tug to be able to recover the ship, and then it becomes a crippled ship, and then, of course, you can repair it. So... And one thing I did also was I made it a minimum burr, not a maximum burr combat, from my end anyway, to try and reduce the amount of damage every turn that the Juggernauts were doing and really amplify the effect of my EW. That makes sense. I want my ships to last as long as I can while inflicting as much crippling damage to them as I can. So what was the end result? At the end of the day, I destroyed, not just crippled, but I destroyed 2 destroyers and 3 frigates. And I'll show you that here in a second, what they have left. Now, what I lost a D4C. That sucks. I had 1 D4C, rescued by the rescue tug, so 1 crippled. I had a D4 destroyed. That's 2 cruisers lost. I had a D4 crippled. I had 1 F4 destroyed. So as far as destroyed ships, that's 1 D4C, 1 D4, 2 cruisers, and a F4, and then 7 F4s crippled. So at the end of the day, with this battle, I only lost 3 ships, which is amazing that I took out 5 and only lost 3, even though I had a bunch of cripples. So I'm pretty impressed with that outcome. And then, of course, they had to, so interesting note on the Mauler. So the Mauler did a couple things. There were 5 rounds of combat, apparently. So in the first round of combat, it killed an F4. No problem, because that was the approach battle. That was the intent of the F4, or the using nothing but F4s. In the second round, it killed a D4C, but then I rescued it with the rescue tug. So that's good. In the third round, it killed a D4C. In the fourth round, for some reason, it only crippled a D4. And in round 5, it killed a D4. So interesting to note there, right? Because of the way I sort of mixed in the ships, I tried to mitigate or decrease the damage that was inflicted by the Mauler, or basically its effectiveness. So what does that mean? What does that mean, Tony? What do we got left? Well, let's look up the minor fleets, and we'll look up Juggernaut Raiders. So they have, as you can see here, 1 cruiser and 1 light cruiser remaining. And it will be my intention to try, if I can, get those mothers. Get those mother truckers. We'll see what happens. But what do I have in reserve? So let's look at JTF-A and JTF Gamma. Klingon. Where are you? Klingon. There we are. So JTF Alpha. This is the Alpha fleet. And JTF Gamma. So as you can see, lots of cripples here. So not in the fleet boxes. We have a T4. Oh, there's Red Fleet as well. Let's pull up Red Fleet. Red Fleet was in that hex as well. Duras, I think. Yeah. All right. So Red Fleet still has all their ships intact. So we've got we have a D4C, 6 non-crippled F4s, and then 4 from Red Fleet. So we have 10 F4s. This is all the stuff that's not crippled. 10 F4s and a D4C remaining. And then we also have another F4 remaining, and then a couple cripples. So we have a lot of cripples, and I can only repair so many. However, they're also still within movement range, assuming the raiders don't go too far. They're also within movement range of my homeworld, so I can have a new round of fresh builds that can move and attack the Juggernauts. Now, the Juggernauts will move first, so the question is, will they be able to move to, and normally they would be, I don't know if they'll have free access to get to the alpha wormhole or their fake wormhole. If they can get there and get out, then I can't catch them because they'll move too fast and they'll move first. But if there is an opportunity, I'm going to try and see if I can get them before they leave. There's also this South Fleet, which is nothing. For context, South Fleet, it's an E2. So I have basically 2 E2s, which are just frigates, just sitting there. However, if there is a way to be able to pin them, then that would be a way to stop them from retreating. Even if I just pin them and then retreat, they'll probably blow up those ships, but it will stop them in their tracks if I'm able to, and we'll see how that goes. So we'll see. We shall see. Anyway, that's what's going on the Klingon side. And of course, we got some other exploration stuff that I talked about. And then I will move my head to the other side to lastly discuss Les Romulans. Last faction of today. Nothing too crazy with the Romulans. Like I said, they're increasing their fleet numbers. So that's interesting to note. You can see, obviously, the ridiculous number of these fleets up here, which are basically cruisers with prime teams. Interesting to note, of course, they're building this. They've built this YBS here to facilitate further exploration and expansion to the north. They're doing the same thing in the south here, as you can see. Interesting to see. Of course, they are building. Oh, they're building a base station on top of this wormhole here, the 19th Legion. And then they've got a YSN there. Are they actually? Well, they're not actually building it yet, but the YFB is a tug, so I'm expecting to see a base under construction there shortly. The only other sort of thing from the Klingon side to be concerned about is 2nd Legion, but I don't believe, and we'll just take a quick look, I don't believe 2nd Legion has changed. Yeah, so it's still just Kingbird, which is their command cruiser, and then 3 WBs. But I expect that, let's see, what's in 1st Legion? Because those are the, so Vulture, Kingbird, Warbird, and YSN. So that's interesting because that's right in the vicinity of these wormholes. And what are you going to do with those? So we saw that the Romulan fleet numbers were increasing. The question is, where are they putting their numbers into, like, where are they putting their fleets? Is it just more ships that they're going to use to explore their borders, which is kind of looks like what's going on, or is there something else going on there? I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay, so let's just check in here. It's been just shy of 2 hours. And we've gone through the gambit of everything that's gone on. Now, as you know, we had 2 weeks off, or like a 2 week gap between the last live stream and today. And that was, I apologize. I went camping with the fam, and as you saw in the video, I wasn't here last week. However, we've only gone one turn forward. Oh, I'll get into... Yeah, Tony has a single ship in fleet box. Yeah, I know. My pet peeve, and I'm doing it. Look at that. Yeah, we've only gone one turn in that 2 weeks, so that's good. Couple of contributing factors there, but we're back on tempo as of this week, so you'll see another turn next week. Turn, say it with me now, 69. Not like that. So we've got turn 69 coming up next week. It'll be very exciting to see what occurs. I mean, now that the Now that the Juggernauts, will I be able to catch the Juggernauts? Will I be able to get them before they escape? Is there any value in doing that, or am I just going to waste ships in the process? Who knows? But nonetheless, a victory to be sure. Are the Tholians going to come through and counterattack against the Remans and the ISC, or are the yellow and red combo going to tag team and do damage to the Tholian faction? How is that going to impact the control of territory that the IC are exercising in, shall we say, least Hydran space? And will that actually change ownership when it's all said and done? Or are the Hydrans going to have enough oomph to be able to actually do a counterattack and do any damage? And are the Carnarvon going to ramp up and actually do damage to stop the tidal wave that is the ISC and Remans? If they don't, are they going to stop on their own, or are they going to be distracted by the shiny object of the Tholians as they rule through? Are the Federation putting aside their peaceful ways, and are they going to warmonger their way through the rest of the game? Who knows? It'll be interesting to see how that evolves going forward. And of course, what is going on with that Gorn and Romulan free transit zone? There's a lot of hexes there. What does that mean? Should the Tholians be concerned, or is this just a way for them to share the exploration towards the center? Who knows? It'll be very interesting to see and find out as we evolve. The game is changing. Tech milestones are coming. How is the dynamic of the game going to be thrown into flux? I don't know. We'll have to see. But if you want to chat about it with us on our Discord channel, then please feel free to head over to either the link there, hit the QR code that you can see on the screen, or hit Patreon and join us on the Discord channel tier. And you can join us on the Discord channel and participate in that witty banter, the back and forth, and the discussion around what's going on in the game. Before I go, let me just drop into the chat and see what's going on. All right. Eugene says, even 2 fleets is not enough to overcome the innate advantages of the legendary E1 captain has over any potential adversary. They better bring 5 to even make the odds even. I couldn't agree more. It doesn't matter what the Carnarvon think they have, or how much oomph they think they can bring to a conflict with the Klingons. As long as that E1 captain is at the head of our spearhead movement, nothing can hold them back. For surely the bold, courageous, and experienced tactical mind of this particular Klingon officer will be enough to be able to surpass even the most cunning canine counterattack that may be coming our way. But not to worry, I don't think that anything is going to spark up between the Carnarvons and the Klingons anytime soon. After all, the Carnarvons have their hands full, and the Klingons still got some Juggernauts to wrap up, so I don't think there's going to be any issues there anytime soon. We'll see. Hopefully the Carnarvon don't come knocking, because if they do, Daddy's got a baseball bat and a shotgun in the closet. What's going to happen with that? We shall see. All right. So, again, for those of us who are all on the Discord, we're going to be having a chit-chat after this around the use of SIDS and how base assaults are going to occur going forward. And if you are interested in joining, like Blair did today, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. Join our community of folks that are keeping their fingers on the pulse of what's going on in this campaign. If a financial contribution is up your alley, then feel free to hit coffee, or if Patreon's more your speed, Patreon is also there in the description below. Either way, one way or the other, really appreciate all of you coming out to join us here today or catching us on the replay, as the case may be. And I will see you next week with turn, say it with me now, 69. Bye for now.